Hello and welcome to Fire in the Valley. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by Brian Meter. Good afternoon, Brian, or good morning, I should say.
Good morning, good afternoon, Pete. Yes, great to have you, to be with you.
Yeah, thank you. Listen, thank you so much for coming on. So tell us, who are you, what are you doing, where are you from?
Well, my name is Brian Meter. I am German originally. I live in Ireland, so I have a bit of a funny accent, some people say. Some people pick up the Irish when I say Irish. But there's also German words in there. I've been in Germany now for the last 4 weeks, so my girlfriend always says I sound a bit more German now than when I live in Ireland. So moved to Ireland 5 years ago, but my background is a bit different. I used to be an engineer here in Germany. I did that until 5 years ago. I was always interested in the environment and in environmental protection. Even as a young child, I used to go with the wheelbarrow into the forest and collect rubbish and bring it to the local waste department and things like that. So it was always kind of with me. It probably comes from my dad, who works for a recycling company. I've probably somehow, and just from there, I suppose, always had the interest in protecting, cleaning, collecting waste. I always, from an early age, even as a teenager, and then I suppose in my 20s, was always the educator for my friends, telling them not to throw any rubbish on the ground. And I was the annoying one who told them not to drop the lids of the beer bottles and things like that. But bit by bit, people picked up on things and were like not doing it anymore because I said it to them. So I probably realized from an early age that when you believe in something and you share that, people actually pick up on it and listen to it. And whether they agree with it or not, there's somewhere in the mind it sticks. And that led me then, I suppose, towards my studies. So I studied environmental protection, all about waste management and water treatment and, I suppose, industrial cleaning of air and things like that. But never wanted to be an engineer. It's a funny thing about it. It was just a subject as such that interested me. But when I actually became an engineer, I was like, okay, I'm an engineer now. So what now? I was never the person who wanted to design things or calculate buildings or measure. Never into that really, but the subject as such was what I was interested in. So I worked in the field for a bit, and 5 years ago I just left that. So left that and moved to Ireland. I suppose that was a process in itself, because when I finished my studies, that was actually in 2009. Went to Australia for a year, traveled Australia, something that I wanted to do for such a long time, and just do a year of work and travel, probably more travel than work, and enjoy, because I knew like when you come back, it's that mindset you get into work and like it's going to be over. You will never be able to do these things, because that's how I grew up and was probably programmed in certain ways. And came back then, had my first job in German, it's called, when you have like contaminated soil and companies that clean up those areas. Horrendous work experience. Bullied from the first day. I lasted for 9 months. I don't know how I did it, because I was really in a really bad place back then. It's like a first experience, and I was quite old considering it was my first work experience. And then you have those thoughts in your mind where you think, okay, at this age, my cousins already worked for 12, 14 years because they started working very young. They already made so much money. They already paid so much in their pension. And what am I? I have a CV with one job. So like all of these things kind of were my first really bad work experience. But I had the courage then to quit, although there was the thoughts like, why? What does your CV look like and things like that? But I quit. It took me a while to recover, because I was in a really bad place personally. Kind of question yourself and how good are you, and are you making your parents proud, things like that. But I moved back. My parents supported me. Took me a few months, got a new job then, which I did for 4 years then before I moved to Ireland, which was a complete different experience. Wonderful company, wonderful boss, free, like very free, I suppose, area to work. Obviously, you had your things to do, but very, very independent, that's the word. But all the support, knowing if you do something wrong, there's a backup for you. always be honest, and like learn a lot of things, but I also learned it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. It was kind of like an office job, going into companies and consulting them on environmental laws and things like that, and also political work. And I realized, well, this is just not who I am. And I suppose at the same time, because of my girlfriend, who is from Ireland, she's the one who brought me to Ireland pretty much. She's an energy therapist, so she works with bioenergy and the subconscious mind. And I suppose the last 10 years that we've been together, 9 years, she opened up a lot of new things to me. The whole idea of your thoughts create your reality, the whole idea of just believe things are going to work out, have faith in things, go after what you think is right rather than doing what you're told to do. That whole mindset, I suppose, has shifted so hugely over the last 9 years. And I suppose that allowed me to also take that step and quit the safe job with the company car and all the law that you have, and go to Ireland not knowing what would happen and what would come. So it's been a big change over the last 9 years. Who I am today is a complete different person to 9 years ago, like literally from a health point of view, but also from the whole way I look at the world and the way I pick up on words and the way I do talk to people, and be very conscious of what we say, what we think, and give people kind of like make them aware of that too. Just be aware of what you're just saying. Listen to what you're saying. Those things. I suppose that's where I am today. So yeah, moved to Ireland 5 years ago. Same time became an energy therapist myself. Studied nutrition. Became a nutritional therapist. Became a biohacker, which is all about really making the body like the best it can be from a physical standpoint, I suppose through nutrition, but I also work with certain supplements that do that. So a lot of things really have changed. If you told me this 10 years ago, that I would, number one, work for myself in something completely different, in a different country, I would have said you are completely crazy. But here I am now, and I actually love doing it with all the struggles that it brings, but also the excitement it brings. I mean, I'm in Germany now because I'm with my parents now for the last 4 weeks, and just having the freedom to come here without having to ask someone, can I go there for 2 or 3 weeks? I can create my day the way I want to, which is just, when I talk about it now, it seems so surreal because it's something I would never have imagined or aimed for probably until 5-6 years ago.
Wow, I mean, there's so much there. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, first of all, explain to us, energy therapist, biohacker. These are terms. These are not normal sort of engineering terms. Let's talk to us.
Yeah, they're definitely not engineering terms. They're not something that you can measure like engineers like to do. But I suppose that even when I look at the way I got into it through my girlfriend and her dad, it's just opened a whole new world to me. When my girlfriend first told me, or I suppose treated me with it 9 years ago, and just through that treatment, she picked up on information from my subconscious mind that she just could not know because I didn't tell her. She only knew me very briefly, and I thought, how can you know that? And I suppose, how can you pin that down to an exact time period of my life?
Can you share what the symptoms were at that time? I mean, what was happening to cause you to be there?
To be where?
In terms of actually going in for the treatment as such?
It was just an interest because she came over for the first time to Germany, and I was just interested in what she was doing. And she just showed me what it is, and she just did a treatment for me. I had no issues as such. I probably had a bit of, back then I was diagnosed with arthritis in my shoulders, and I had a chronically inflamed Achilles tendon, which I did heal, I can say that, through change of diet. But probably the awareness of the energy and our thoughts, how our past affects our physical body, played a role as well. So it was just very interesting to see how you can pick up on this information, although the logical mind was still kind of like fighting it. It's like, I know, like, that doesn't make sense to what I lived for the last, like, for 30 years, but kind of being open. And it's kind of funny because I think all my life inside of me there was an interest for things like that, but I never looked at it. I had no one in my family, no one in my friend circle who would have been open for anything like this. You just become kind of like, you play soccer, you go drinking, you just do all the same things. But deep down there was something always, like, I always knew there's something different, but I did not know what. And I suppose through that experience of her picking up certain things, certain events in my life that have brought me to where I was back then and made me struggle with certain things, was an eye-opener to, like, okay, this is how it affects me. And through the last 9 years, getting loads of treatments like that, I would say an issue as such I didn't have back then. Like I said, obviously the arthritis, which I did cure through the change of diet, which I never had issues since. But also when I look at how I was personally, I was a person back then who was very cautious of who I let into, like, closely towards me. I had a very, I would say, traumatic breakup with my first relationship. And I was carrying that with me for probably 10 years, like, let's say five to 6 years. There was like constant fear of letting someone in again because it could end traumatic again. And that really, like, took a long time for me to overcome that, because that thought pattern was so ingrained, is that the right word, ingrained, into me, that I was like, no, never ever will I, like, get to that point to let someone in and to be able to allow to be hurt or feeling so bad about yourself ever again. So I suppose through that's where I found that energy therapy very interesting, where you just look at the body in a more complex way. I mean, people probably know of Reiki, or I mean, like, even when you do yoga or meditation, it's in a way it's energy work, because you do work on a physical body in some way, but you more like working on the energetic aspect of the body. And even when you look at how we are made, how we develop in the womb of our mother, there's an energetic field first, and everything comes from that. And I mean, a lot of science goes into that now. There's mind-body medicine that picks up on these things. So it's very interesting getting into that. And I suppose that really opened up a whole new world for me.
It's amazing when you start untapping this. I suppose it's a bit like, the like a loose thread or something. You start pulling and you sort of, there's probably a point where you never understand everything, right? It's going to be a journey, a lifetime journey, right?
Absolutely. Sometimes you think, like, well, will I ever be, like, I've done so much work already on me and looked at so many things and so many past experience and so many things that we also carry with us from our ancestors. We're not aware of it. And then you feel like, I've done so much now over the last year, so when is there an end? But it's like, once you open that box, it's open. And you're not able to close it. You just go another layer deeper and deeper and deeper. And even for me here, coming from Germany, and even I was never aware of that. But when you think of what happened in Germany 80 years ago, and my grandmother was involved in it, it has an effect on you. It has an effect on how she grew up, how she raised my dad, and then how my dad passes on things to me. So all of this kind of, like, in a way, made me who I am today. So understanding that, even when you have certain fears or doubts or the way you react to certain people, it's like, hold on now, is this me, or is it just the program that I'm running from other people? Because at the time when they lived or were in the field they were in, they needed that program to protect them, to allow them to function. So for me, I think it's very important for me to understand, like, to step back and look at it. Okay, why do I react like this? And understand the bigger picture, I suppose, of that's in a way in your energetic field. It's in a way in your DNA as well. But your DNA again picks up the information from your energetic field. So whatever you want to call that, so it's very interesting to look into these things, and I'm very, very grateful for that experience. And it's funny, even when I look back now, how I got to learn about these things is by traveling to Australia, working on an island, the Great Barrier Reef, where I met my girlfriend from Ireland, her working in the spa, me doing housekeeping in the hotel resort, and all we did back then was having a great time and drinking pretty much. So it's, and here I am now 11 years later, and have become this person that when I look back, it's just so incredible. And I'm very grateful for that experience and that knowledge that I gained from her and her dad, who has been doing this for over 30 years now, who brought bioenergy to Ireland 30 years ago. And obviously, being confronted with a lot of negativity around it and people questioning it and the system questioning it. So really having to build up a shield to go for what he believed back then is the right thing. He just knew it was the right thing. And I suppose for me now, looking at that now, is also, I know what I'm doing is the right thing in order to actually serve humanity. That's what I deeply believe, because we know what's going on right now. There's so many things going on out there we don't even understand. And I think it's very important to take a step back and look at it from the outside and be like, look at, just take it a bit slower and look at things from a different angle and a different understanding.
It kind of almost sounds slightly like you've kind of gone on a full circle in terms of, you mentioned very early at the start in terms of your younger self, and you were collecting rubbish in the woods, and you were sort of, advising and helping people and telling people about the consequences and things like that. And yeah, you had this sort of engineering period in the middle, which engineering is always interesting because there is a creative aspect, but it's, there's a lot more to it. But now you've come back into this area where you're sort of hunting in your own mental woods as such, and you're sort of clearing out the waste and helping people to do it for themselves. Does that make sense?
Now that you say it, yeah, it makes total sense. Like clearing out the waste that people have gathered in their own woods over years, and it might not even be their own rubbish. And I think that's what I really like. It's about empowering people to have a different understanding of why they think certain things, or why they do certain things, or why they behave in certain ways, or why they have the same conflicts all the time, or why they need the same drama all the time, even when it's within the family with children. You see it at times. It's just a kind of like a way of things playing out. They're coming from a deeper level, and to understand that. So yeah, it probably does go back to back in the days. And even when I think of times as a child or as a teenager, I never really fully fitted in. I was always a bit of the one in school who got bullied. I wouldn't say bullied, but kind of like played tricks at, not like in a very bad way, but in a fun way, if you want. So not really badly. I had loads of friends, but it was always the one, maybe like the one who would have the trick would have been played on first, in a way, if that makes sense. And even in school, I would have asked a lot of questions to teachers when it came to learn this or learn that, and I would be like, but why? It doesn't make, why, for what? And it's like, you don't ask to just do it. And even as a younger child, I remember my dad keeps telling me that I don't remember it, but he says he worked in waste recycling, so he used to drive a truck. And on my school holidays as a young child, I would be with him in the truck all day, and I would literally ask him questions all day, like, why is this, where's this going, what's this truck doing, what's this sign for? And to a point where he says, he remembers saying it to me, stop asking me so many questions. And I probably stopped at that time to actually, in some way, like, like step back, like, okay, I'm not asking those questions anymore. And it's only lately, through what I'm doing now, through my new business, where I do have to ask a lot of questions and ask people where they're at in life. It's a bit difficult at times to ask those questions. And I'm just realizing the reason for that is probably connected to that early experience of your closest relative, or one of the two, telling you to be quiet, to not ask. So it's interesting looking at it now, to connect the dots and don't be so hard on myself in the now, when it's like there's a struggle of doing what I should be doing, or asking something, or having more of a conversation with a person because I was told not to ask.
It's amazing the stuff you pick up, and it's. I mean, that's a it's a very light comment. It's not an accusation. It's not a well. Sorry, the way you're explaining it certainly doesn't. I mean, people have been bullied. People have had all sorts of things in the negative connotation, but that was just, and then maybe even the connotation that your dad was just busy that day or trying to concentrate or whatever, and yet it has left a footprint, right?
Absolutely. And I probably at some point maybe judged him for it, or
Hmm.
like wouldn't say blamed, but kind of like, why would you say that? But now, even a few years later, now I understand, well, he wasn't aware of that. It wasn't meant like that. It's just the way things are said, the way things are done or were done, back then. It was just a different time also. But I also I see it now in my nephew and my niece, similar-ish,
Hmm.
when they're here and the things my parents would say. And I know they're not meant, but it's very, I would say, healing for me even to see it, because I'm sitting there and thinking, well, did you say this to me too? When I was that age, just little things without any bad meaning, but things: you can't do this, you can't do that, don't, slow down, be careful, this is gonna happen. All the negative things. And it's just interesting to pick up on that and to see that. And it probably brought more awareness to me, to more learning about me as well, to like see how I became who I am, or why I struggle with certain things today, without putting blame on anyone. Just understanding, okay, it's not my program. I'm just running it. I'm slowly getting rid of it and changing it and adjusting it. And but I do understand where it's coming from and why it's there.
Are you where you're supposed to be now?
I would say in a way yes, because I think we're always where we're supposed to be. Could I be somewhere further or different? Also yes, but I think it's, for me, I would like to be further, but I also learn that it's okay where I am now, and it's a process, and I'm going through it, and I need to learn things that I never learned
Hmm.
before. I need to hear things I never heard before, and I suppose that's also what brought me onto your podcast, to do something I've never done before either, and that's going to help me to get to the next step.
What's your thoughts in terms of the gap between who you truly are and who you are today? Do you think there's a gap, or what's your take?
I think the gap for me is getting rid of old programs that I'm carrying with me, because truly I am supposed to do, I would say, more like, it should be more successful, and I'm talking in a financial way now. But I see why I'm not, because I just grew up differently. And it's not about blaming, but it was never on my mind. It was never something that I strive for or aimed for or had an interest in. I had a complete different story around it, around success. Successful people, they just, they rule the world, and in a negative and in a bad way. So I don't want to be like them. I never looked at it in a different way. I never saw people as having money, being successful. I just used the success as a money in at the moment. Obviously, there's more to success than money, but in a financial way. And I suppose that's how I'm looking at it, in regards to, could I be somewhere different, or if where I'm truly who I truly am and where I am now. I would say from the real inner core of going after what's right, and believing I'm doing the right thing, I'm doing good things, they're coming from the right place. I would say I'm very, very close to where who I really am. It's just, I suppose, looking at the success I'm talking again in financial way, to be able to maintain that, and not having to go back to where you get to a point where, like, well, can I continue the life that I'm living right now, or do I have to make a priority to make a living in a different way in order to, yeah, to look after the family, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us, what does fire in the belly mean to you?
I was thinking about that earlier when I read the the uh, the email you sent previous to this call, and I was like, what's the fire in the belly to me? And at this moment, I would say it's different now to what it used to be. But right now, I really, really, really have a big fire for just empowering people to go after what they want to do. And that could be in a way of the job they want to do, the income they want to have, um, the house they want to live in, um, the relationship they want to have with their parents or their friends, or the circles they want to be in. So loads of different things, because even through this last 6 months and this whole global crisis, I feel a lot of people are realizing, hold on, now there's other things out there. I can't rely on what I thought was the norm, my job. And when we look at Ireland, big tourism industry, and people had the safest job you can think of in Ireland, and all of a sudden it's gone. So I think, and that for me gave me even more drive to encourage people to look at things differently and don't rely on that system, because I was in that system, and there's nothing wrong with the system. But it's just, once you take that step or that look, try something different, and go after what the feeling that you have. If you blocked out that, if you just listen to the feeling and just blocked out the head, which will try to talk you out of it because it's too fearful, or it doesn't work, or never done this before. When you can get to that point and just listen to that and be like, I just do it. I don't know how, I don't know what, I don't know where, but I just start something differently, to be more independent in the future. And that could be in many different ways. So for me, really, it's about empowering people. And a big part of that for me is it's connected to children, because children are affected by the parents, the health of the parents, whether it's physical or mental, or whether they come home from a 12-hour work day, and they're not happy. Like, children pick up on that. We pick up on everything that happens around us. Our subconscious picks up on everything. And through the energy work, I've noticed that when children come to the clinic, and you see what they just reflect things from the parents, and encouraging parents to understand the importance of their own health and their happiness. And we know a lot of people are not happy in what they're doing, and that's a lot of times connected to their work life, because we are told to have this great job, this income, to pay that mortgage, but at the end of the day, your child doesn't care. They just want to see you happy, and spending time with them as much as possible. So I personally don't have children yet, but that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I have that time freedom to then be able to spend that time and do what I want with them. And I want to encourage more parents to say, like, look, it doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account. Your child doesn't care about that. Your child cares about experiences and things you've done together. And that's what I'm aiming for, is empowering more people to take that step, whatever it might be for them, to look at alternatives, look at different ways of making a living, I suppose.
It's always interesting. I mean, to make that conscious decision and to decide, that, it's a bit like what your father did for you, I suppose, is to create that space that, you can, sort of bring in a child. As you say, it's quite often it's about quantity time, not necessarily quality time per se. It's, you're creating that space, allowing them to be themselves, just to be there, and you don't have to be doing something amazing all the time, just being in the space, right?
Absolutely. And then even that's a good point there. Even something that I've noticed lately, also since I'm here in Germany now with and spend a bit of time with my nephew and my niece, and it's just to let them be, let them play, let them use the screwdriver the wrong way. It doesn't matter. You don't have to do it perfect. They figure it out somehow. And that's again another thing that I also noticed. And again, just talking about it now, I'm thinking of it now, it's kind of interesting to see that, because I know my dad would have been teaching me every little step, that when you do something, we would have been doing a lot of craft works when we were younger. he would have like built everything himself and show me, but he would never like let me try to figure it out. It's like, this is how you do it, and this is the only way you do it. And to this day, it would be like that. So just seeing that, and I think allowing the kids then to express themselves in the way they want to try out things, whether it's wrong or right. It's just wrong in our perception because of what we've been told or because of how we did it. But there might be another way of doing it. So let's figure it out. And they will probably come up with a way more creative solution to it. And that's always amazing to see when you let them do it. Just to be like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of doing it that way, but yeah, that actually works. So that's really something that got to me the last few weeks, spending time here in Germany with them.
It's amazing to give, as you say, to give the space, because by nature, and especially as a sort of an engineer, you know, your job is to find solutions and is to step in and to, you know, to be and also be the doer. I mean, you as a child were, you know, out there collecting rubbish, you know, and doing active, but to stand back and give space to somebody else to do that it is a skill. I think it's a skill.
It definitely is a skill, and it was a struggle for me when I first, I suppose, through the energy work, through my girlfriend, who was a completely different character, who just does things without thinking about them first, differently to me. But I couldn't understand that in the beginning, and there was certain conflicts. But now, years later, the more time was I spent with her, I picked up on these things, and it's actually okay to allow it to happen, and to give that space for whatever it may mean, and to kind of relearn your thinking. That's the main thing. Also, I mean, I'm German. We do think differently in Germany than people do in Ireland on average, I would say. And it's just, things have to be very organized and strict and set, and this is how we do it, and it's when we do it. And I used to be like that. And when you're like that, it's difficult to just create space or allow space for things to happen, because things don't happen, right? In Germany, like they're planned and organized and all of these things. So it's kind of like relearning that for me and allowing that. And it's okay if you don't know how something's going to work out, or you don't know where it's going to go to. So that alone, that was a big lesson. And again, looking at it now, when I go back to Germany, I do struggle at times with the mentality, and where like, I'm not that person. What I can see, I was there, but now I'm different. And it's not good or bad. It's just because of living in a different country with a different culture, a different lifestyle. It's just interesting to see how this plays out, and how you develop, and how you are able to allow things that you wouldn't have been in the past.
Makes sense. I mean, I think having that space it means a lot. Take us right back then. Talk to us about your childhood, you know, and early memories and things like that.
That's an interesting question, because it's funny that I don't have a lot of memories from childhood, and I've been talking about this with my my girlfriend a lot, because she has memories from a very early age, let's say even 3 years of age, where she held her baby brother. I don't have those memories. There's like little bits and bobs. We haven't figured out why, or why it's been blocked out, or certain things. But apart from that, I would say I had a happy childhood. I know I was loved. I know I was looked after. But I also look at it now, was probably imprinted with certain worries from a financial point of view. Will there be enough, you know, living in a small apartment in Germany, you know, sharing the room with my sister for a long time. We didn't have enough, like didn't have 2 rooms. So these are the things that I remember. Certain events as such, there's like, it's funny because the main events that stand out that I remember are probably the not so nice ones. And there's a particular one that I would always remember, is when I lost my parents in a shop once, when I was like 5 years or so. And to the day, I remember sitting on those stairs in the shop and literally thinking, my parents are gone. They left me. Like I will never ever, and it's like the most horrendous feeling you can ever think of. And to this day, I can relate to that. And it's that's what I have. So when I look from there and to how I grew up as a teenager, and I suppose having relationships, and even to this day, in the early days of my relationship, there was always a bit of like, again, that fear of the people who love you, they disappear because of that one memory, which was just a few minutes where I probably sat on those steps. But it's interesting that this kind of like used to come back to me a lot, but we worked a lot on it, and I have more understanding. But still, this is one of the major memories as a child. And other things, I remember just being quite afraid with people, or with like bigger, I suppose, crowds. In school was fine. It's actually, now that I'm talking about it, a memory comes back. In early days, so like the third and the fourth grade in school, I was super good in maths. So we had something called the counting king. So you would be asked, 5 times 5 and 6 times 3, and whoever's the fastest. I was the fastest in that for a long time in my class. But again, it was just memorizing things. It wasn't really like an emotional development. It was just like memorizing facts and numbers. And yeah, that's one of the memories I have from that. I don't know how I got there now, but yeah, because of that, the thing was not feeling comfortable in bigger groups. I remember my dad used to bring me. He was a big football player, so soccer player in Germany. Well, not just in a local club. And he used to bring me to the soccer training from an early age. And I was probably like 8 or 9, but I was actually crying. I just did not want to play with them. I didn't know them. They were like, and again, the thought of like, oh, they're all better than me. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to kick the ball. All of these thoughts you have. And I had them there as a child. And even when there was like, in Germany, we have carnival every year. That's in around February, March time, where you dress up and you just celebrate carnival. And for children, it's a big thing also. And I remember in school you had those dress up, and I was never like really into that. I was always the one, everyone else loved it, to be the cowboy or the pirate or whatever. And I just didn't, I don't know why, but I never really enjoyed myself doing that. So looking back, yeah, it was a happy childhood, I would definitely say, but there were certain struggles with self-esteem, with probably picking up things from my parents, also knowing where my parents came from, and things I didn't know back then. So that's probably most of the memories that I have from childhood.
Isn't it amazing how the brain has sifted through all that information and found a moment of perceived vulnerability, being left. And as you were saying that, actually, I remember I was left in a shop by accident, and just a very innocent mix-up, but yet the brain has attached so much to that moment. Never mind the thousands of hours and years of comfort and care and support and all the rest, and yet, what is that? Is that the primal brain? It's as in, fear-based. It sort of leaves a very heavy footprint, right?
It definitely is, and I suppose that's the memory in your subconscious. So you can probably go back into history of mankind. That's how our brain is probably programmed, like how we developed back in the days. That's how the brain was developing. We are like, there was a lot of fear of other things and these little triggers. But then if I also look at how my parents grew up, there was probably an aspect also of picking up on their unresolved fears and emotions. My mother's American. She's born in America, but her parents got divorced, so they were German. So she went back with her mother to Germany when my mother was 12 years of age. They went to Germany on a boat, and my mother was told, "You're going on a holiday trip," but you never went back to see your dad. So there's like this underlying, and she would still say to today, it's like she knows exactly that feeling, when she got on that boat. And probably as a child, even though you're not talking, your parents are not talking about these things, they're just unresolved emotions, and you pick up on them whether you want or not. That's just the way it is. Whether you already kind of adapt them when you're born, or like preconception, we can talk about that, or you pick up through all your life somehow because it kind of comes back for your mother, or as a contact with her mother, and you pick up as a child. So these things were always there. And then I suppose my dad's side, my dad is German. When he grew up as a child, it was difficult also, going to school in a small village. There wasn't much, you always say, like, there wasn't much love back like from the parents' side, because it was a hard life in the 50s, which was just like 10-15 years after the war. You go to school, after school you're out in the field, you work in the field all day to make sure you have food on the table. And I suppose my grandmother then having the experience of wartime, where you literally like block out every emotion that you have, not knowing, will your father come back from the war? So there's like so many things in that bloodline alone for me. And these things do affect us. It's some more than others, but the more you become conscious of these things, that's why I believe the more you work on that, the more your body or your mind, or whatever you want to call it, gives you of these experiences to work on them and to clear them for your bloodline, really, because you don't want to pass that on. Because I collect my own things, and then I pass it on also to my children, and then they collect their things, and they pass on all the stuff from other further on. So I think it's important, and that's probably like why as a child you pick up on events that might not be as traumatic. And you have kids, right? Yeah. So sometimes you feel like one child reacts to the same situation completely differently. So why is that? Or like the same child from different or from a friend's family, why do they react so differently to the same situation? And I suppose that's what we're looking at is then it has to do with things that we have been kind of pre-programmed with, or that we brought with us as a burden already into this life without even knowing.
I find it, fascinating at how, I suppose even, well, I know with my own girls, I had 3 young girls, and, just doing a number of things and actually realizing that actually females are born, their ovaries, there's like 1 to 2 million basically embryos, as well as maybe not even embryos. So it's eggs as such in their ovaries from the moment that child is born, therefore, and probably through the actual growth process. So the madness in that is going, I have 3 young girls, are all under 4 years of age, and they're actually, my potential grandkids are already inside them. So, and to go back to your point, it's kind of going, well, possibly a traumatic event is going to change my child, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever way. It doesn't, but actually potentially that could change the cell structure of the body and also have an effect on the grandkids, which kind of blows my mind, right? Because you're like, how, what?
Absolutely.
It's just, I suppose, and that's, it's just trying to sort of understand, I suppose, the consequences of what we do to ourselves, the patterns and all that. But how do you, and you've talked a lot there about in terms of almost yourself being on a process, and you've been quite open about that. I mean, how do you get the stage of constantly uncovering, but also then to someone who's not as maybe as aware and actively working on themselves yourself, that you don't just drown in all these fears and consequences and events that have happened, and you just become blocked in yourself, and suddenly you can't move for fear.
I suppose you have to look at how other people, where they come from, how open are they, how much work have they done, what are they presenting with in the first place. Everyone, I want to go really deep, but it's my decision, but not everyone wants to go there. So for someone else it might just be, let's just work on a few things so that I can overcome my anxiety, or someone else might be severely chronically ill and wants to work on that as well. I mean, there's a physical aspect, but there's the energetic aspect to it. and the emotional aspect and the spiritual aspect. It just depends on where one wants to go. So it's sometimes I have to tell myself to be like, hold on now, not everyone understands everything that you are saying to them. They think this is complete woo-woo. So you have to kind of pick them up where they are, and it's about planting those little seeds. And what I do at times is, if I have conversations with friends, I used to be very, and I have to say that's another process I went through. I was very in your face, like, I know all this, you have to do this, you have to meditate every day, and do all of these things. When you realize, hold on now, it took me a while to get there, and I was open, and now I see like some people don't even want that. It's too scary for them to look at it, something they don't know. They rather stay in that field that they are now. That's what they can manage. They're happy with the few pains they have. It's okay, they have it under control, and that's it. That's fine. But then there's others where you have to look at how willing are they to work on certain things. So I suppose do the energy work when they come to my girlfriend's clinic, and where I do work with her at times. You notice very quickly how when you talk to them and you give them a bit of like, when you start off like just your thoughts create your reality, like watch out for the words you say, and people's like, oh yeah, I totally get that. Or others look at you and you see big question marks. You have to keep it way simpler, and you can only give them a little bit of to look someone up. Sometimes what I love to do is like, look up this guy on YouTube or look up this talk, because if it's someone else, if it's someone online who has millions of views, it's taken more serious than if it's the guy who just, does a few things. So I personally love Dr. Joe Dispenza. I think Dr. Joe Dispenza, Bruce Lipton, Greg Braden, those three are probably the ones that where a lot of things started for me. And now I would listen a lot to Dr. Joe Dispenza. I do his meditation every morning. And they would be the people that I say, like, look at them, or like look up a movie, look at What the Bleep Do We Know, or simple things like that, because they're the ones that kind of open things up for me. Where people on the TV or computer told me things I haven't heard before, and then when you decide to watch that, you're already open to it. So it just needs that little bit. If you're not ready to watch it, you don't watch it. But when you decide to watch it, even if you just think like, I'm just having a look because I'm interested, something inside of you already decided you're ready to look a bit further and deeper. So that's how I like to approach it. It's just to give people little bits and bobs, or like a 15 minutes, talk, TED talk or something, whatever it might be, depending on the subject. Just give people tools and let them decide what they do with them. Whether it's like, I suppose that's from the aspect of looking at how far do you want to go on that level, and then in other ways when you look at nutrition, it's the same thing. Some people want to like do big changes straight away. For other people, the slightest, smallest change will make a difference for how they feel. So it depends on the person, where they're at, where they're coming from, their background, and also the state they're in right now. Are they severely traumatized from something that just happened, or is it just a build-up over years and they're just sick of it? So again, I suppose it's I like to keep it simple. That's one of my key messages always is keep it simple. Don't overload people, but give them tools to find out for themselves, and then be there to guide them, or to just support them.
No, I find it's interesting, and even those three that you've talked about. Talk to us in terms of the biohacking side. I mean, and the energy therapist side. I mean, what's your methodology in terms of working with people, and sort of, what symptoms do people typically come to you with that is most effective for the treatment?
So people come with all sorts of symptoms. It could literally be someone, stage 4 cancer, and I'm not saying we're curing or treating them, or that's not the point. Or it could just be someone who has a bit of anxiety, or someone who just doesn't sleep well, people with other chronic illness, arthritis, just pain-related illnesses. And suppose when you look at the energetic aspect, yes, there's something happening in the physical body. There is, we can look at the chemical reactions or the chemistry that's happening to create that pain on the physical level. But there is something also on an energetic level going on, which is the trauma, because you can't explain someone had a trauma and 2 weeks later they developed this pain which never went away, but they had no physical, it was just an emotional trauma. So how do you explain that? How can the physical body create a chemical reaction to create pain or inflammation when there was no physical connection in that area of the body? So it's looking at the energetic aspect, but also through the biohacking. I suppose biohacking is also energy work in a way, because it's really, biohacking is all about getting the best, I suppose, treatments for the body. And that can be meditation, that can be nutrition, that can be supplementation, which I'm a big fan of as well. That can be, things like sauna, like red light therapy, like blue light blocking glasses. All of these different things are in a way hacks that we use in order to improve our biology. That's how I would describe it. And in the whole biohacking world as such, you can go from, just tweaking your diet, that's a biohack in a way, to doing red lights therapy 5 days a week, a sauna, Wim Hof breathing, and jumping in a cold pool every morning. It depends on the time you have. I mean, like grounding is a thing, or like forest bathing, which is, really is a forest walk to me. But it's like a lot of things where people understand, okay, we are not just a physical body. It's important to look after the physical body, because our physical body, is carrying our soul in a way. So that has to be healthy as well. And we can work on that level. So the more levels you can work on, the better. Work on your physical body, work on your energetic body, work on your emotional and your spiritual body, because all of that is connected and interconnected with each other. But not everyone wants to do all of these things. Not everyone has the time for it. Not everyone makes the priority for it. So some people just maybe start with, you have people that come just for energy therapy. They don't want to hear anything about nutrition. They're not ready for it, but they are open for the energy aspect. So you work with that. Others come for nutrition first, and you can kind of like find out, is someone open to do a bit more than that? Are they open to the idea of meditating 10 minutes a morning? Or is it like, oh, not yet? So I think it's really about giving people the best tools to become the best version of themselves.
You've mentioned a number of things there in terms of, I suppose, working on their energy, working on their health, their well-being. I mean, what sectors does, do you cover, and or is it a whole range really?
So through the energy work, you can cover pretty much everything, because your subconscious mind knows exactly where to go to. So when you have the right tools and the right protocol and the right way to ask, your subconscious mind will tell you, is it the physical body, or is there an energetic aspect? Is there an emotional trauma attached to it? Is it maybe a spiritual thing? Is it, so they're the main things. But in order to get there, you obviously have to write the right tools. In kinesiology, it's a similar aspect where you ask the physical body, but also some people ask on different levels as well, go a bit deeper. I suppose that's what energy therapists do. And from there, it's just bringing everything together. It's bringing everything together, bringing the best tools together from what we see or what we've experienced or what we've used over the years, to give that person the best possible outcome, and even bring them on that journey and make them aware of that they're not their illness, they're not their pain, they're not their constant drama. They are not what this is just something that's playing out, but they are not this thing that they have manifested also for so long. At the beginning, it starts somewhere, but then when you have it for so long, for years, like, oh, I have this, or like, no, I have MS. That's just the way it is. But when you look deeper and you have different ways of addressing it and just bringing them on just changing their pattern. But it depends on how often they come to you, how long they come to you, because when you believe for 20 years that you have this, it takes a bit of time to change that pattern, that thought pattern, that mindset. So that's what I'm really interested in is challenging people a little bit also to think a bit differently. When you realize, oh, there's a bit of like, oh, a bit of a little resistance, you realize, oh, you're going somewhere. It's like we're at a point where we can bring in a few more ideas for them to work on. And it might not click straight away, but maybe they come back in 6 months and be like, do you know the thing you told me there? I thought it was complete madness, but then like after 2 months, I slowly got into it. So, and that's a bit similar to me. Again, when I hear something new, I'm not the person that adapts things straight away. I listen to something, I hear it, and then I leave it. And then it kind of comes on its own, or it doesn't. Whereas other people, they hear something and then they do it straight away. I would not be like that. I'd be more like, hearing something, picking up on certain things, new ideas, being open to it, yes, but allowing the mind to kind of create its own neural, connections to make that a more dominant thought than just a first idea. And I think that's also, I think, important for people to understand is when you hear something new, and especially when it's health related, and at first you think like this is complete madness, complete nonsense, or doesn't work, will never work. Just don't try to understand it. Just allow it, and give it space, and see where you may find that information, similar information again, and let your brain connect those dots. But when you judge it straight away, it's just your brain connecting that new information to the old program. But if the old program is what brought you to where you are now, you might not want to, compare the new stuff with the old program. So I think that's just having that kind of like that step back and looking at it from the outside as much as possible is probably what's really, really helpful.
Do you tend to work on yourself, or do you, do you seek outside input, or how does it work for for yourself, really?
Yeah, so we do work on each other with the energy work. We do that. We have a program called Hidden Mind where we can look deeper into the subconscious mind. So we would, my girlfriend or dad would do treatments here and there on me just to check. Just like, it's not like a treatment as such anymore for me. It's more like have a quick check what's going on there. I feel a bit like, something's just happening lately. Like the more you work with it, you kind of like get an idea where it's coming from. You're more in tune with yourself. You like, okay, I picked up on, I've been with my dad yesterday and like there was something that just triggered me, and you kind of carrying with you like, okay, it's coming from there. I know that already. But then things like, meditation, visualization, gratitude, all of these very, very simple things are probably the tools that we use a lot. So I would go for reflexology to someone else, or just go to a different therapist just to speak about things differently. I've done family constellations, so all sorts of different. I'm open to everything, and I'm actually very excited to go to Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat, hopefully in February. I hope it's going to work. So these are the things that I love doing, and just for myself, because it's my own healing process, or my own healing and growth, if you want. But then also you learn new things, you bring in new tools that you can again then pass on to other people, whether it's to encourage them to do something similar, or you can use that and implement that in your own, I suppose therapy or education or coaching with the people.
And when you say, you talked about there, sort of on the energy side. Do you tend to, do you feel energy? Do you see energy, or what way is it presented to you?
I wouldn't see it. I know it's different for everyone. Some people do see it, others feel it. So we would work with our hands a lot. So I do feel it. I do feel it in my hands. Not all the time, but it's also, and that's probably something to understand. At the end of the day, energy work comes from with an intention. And when you have the right intention, you work from there. And knowing and believing and seeing that person you work with already where they want to be, but they can't see it yet. Because at the end of the day, we're just a bridge. We're not healing them. We're just connecting them. We might be clearing a few things for them. Yes. Which allows them then to see through something they weren't able to see beforehand. But the work really happens inside of you. It doesn't matter where you go, to which nutritional therapist or which therapist or Reiki or whatever it might be. You are the one who heals. Not someone else doesn't heal you. You do it yourself with the help of other people. So for me, it's really about trusting and believing and having the right intention. That's what does it for me. My girlfriend would be more into, but again, that's different for everyone. So that's how it works for me.
No, it's awesome. In terms of for you, then I'm just curious. I mean, when back when you were a teenager, before this sort of almost this understanding of all this, and you were hitting the engineering path. I mean, what did you originally want to do when you grew up?
I had no idea.
Okay.
I had absolutely no idea, and that was probably the main thing in Germany when you do your A levels. So back then, a lot of people knew, oh, I'm going to study law, I'm going to study business, and I never was into that. I was never into, because some of them were deciding their studies because of the income they will be paid after they leave college, and I thought, God, that thought never crossed my mind at all. And then biology was something I was very interested in. So I thought, I'm going to study biology. I was always interested in nature, in animals. But then my own fears and doubts kicked in because I was a bit over doing mathematics and physics, but it was one big chunk for that study. So I didn't do biology, didn't know what to do. And I randomly ended up at an information day where different universities from all over Germany came to where I lived and just presented themselves. And there was this tiny university I never heard of in the Rhine Valley, and they were doing environmental protection. I thought, oh, you can study that. That's cool. But I never looked into it. I wasn't that proactive guy looking for what's out there, what's possible. It just wasn't like that. And so I heard about that and I thought, oh, this is interesting. And what got me there was also they sold it basically with every year we do an excursion to Iceland. It's like, oh, this is cool. I like to go to Iceland and do this wonderful excursion there, looking at all the glaciers and the volcanoes and all of these things. And that's what got me looking into the studies. So that's how I actually ended up studying that subject, funny enough. But I never had that drive, people say like, oh, I want to become a doctor, I want to become a lawyer, I want to become a policeman. And that was never there. But there was always something there. There was something there that was just so blocked up. Let's put it that way. It was just so blocked up, not allowing it to come out. Probably because of, it's not a real thing or a real job. It's not like you work for a company. It's not like no one in my family, even if I look at my parents, my uncles, my grandparents, none of them were entrepreneurs or doing something different. Just normal jobs, but there was no bigger thinking. None in my family. I'm the first person in my whole family tree to go to university. So even that, I suppose, is just wasn't there. Even to go to, because the school system in Germany is different to Ireland and the UK. So even to go to university, you have to go to a different school because school gets split at a certain age. And even for me to go to that school, I was the first one to go to that school, whereas my cousins and all other relatives would have finished school earlier, but then they were only able to, kind of learn like a I want to say a normal job, or like a job like you become like a builder or a painter or a hairdresser, whatever you want to call it, but you're not allowed to go to college, university. So a different system, and I was the first one to go there, not because it just, I don't know, it just ended up there. Not because I wanted to. It's just kind of like, yeah, just go there and do that, so you have better opportunities later down the road. Not knowing what I was going to do, and then I suppose in Germany also, back then, that's like 19 years ago, you had to do either army. You had to either go to the army, or you do a social year after you finish school before you go to start working or studying. So that again was another gap before I started studying, and I didn't go to the army. I did a social year, and that also opened a lot for me because I worked with a quadriplegic, is that how you say it? So someone who's disabled in a wheelchair from the neck down, and just, that taught me so much. That really, before it was like living at home with mom, who's doing all the cooking and the cleaning and the shopping, and then you look after someone and you have to do all of that for him. So like big growth there. That taught me a lot for life, really. To like, it made me really grow up. But yeah, also I never, even still then, I didn't think I would be doing what I'm doing now. So it's, again, I was still caught in that, not know where to go, just do this. It was still that age also, have fun. College is about having fun, and don't have to be super smart and study too much. It's just playing soccer and have fun and drink, and that's what it was. Looking back now, I'm like, wow, that's some change.
I mean, it's amazing the journey you come on, as you say, and the sort of looking back in hindsight, and that's why a lot of people enjoy this cathartic process of talking about it. But do you have a perception of where you're going and where you want to go? Do you set goals for yourself and intentions, and how does that work from the forward looking point of view?
Yes, so that's something I only started lately. Also, in the past, I always thought like, oh, goal setting is only for rich people, and people who want to work all day, and it's all about business. But I learned that in the last years through the things that I would have listened to through different coaches and teachers. But I do set goals. I do know where I'm going to, at least for the nearer future. I don't know the end goal yet, and I don't even want to know it. I'm happy with knowing the next 5 years, and then from there go on and move from there. We as a family, we're not married yet. We always say we're spiritually married, so that's the paper is just the last piece that's gonna sign the deal, so to speak, and then start a family. But we will always be between countries. Obviously, I'm German. My partner and future wife is Irish. We love traveling. We do want to live abroad somewhere. We do want to live abroad somewhere warm. We do want to be independent. We want to be able to just go. And with what we're doing, we can definitely do that online a lot. And then have wherever you are, then work there a few days, a few weeks, and move on. So I think for now, it's really going to be, we're in Ireland now, but we're looking to have a base somewhere in Ireland, and then keep moving somewhere warm, just to have that experience, and might come back. It's just, I think as long as you don't have children, and that's still possible, we want to do that. Even when children are there, it's still doable, especially at a young age. I know people say like, oh, it's not going to work. It's going to be different. Yes, it's going to be different, but it's still possible if you want it to work. So that's just how we see that, and just take it from there. And then there will probably be a time where we realize, oh no, it's okay. Now it's time to just to settle a bit more in some place. I would love to travel, in a camper van around for a certain period. So these are things, and then I suppose developing ourselves, and sharing more of what we have learned with other people, coaching people on that level, teaching people, and just growing our businesses with that, So I want to work global. I don't want to be pinned down to just, where I live and the surrounding area. I suppose that's the beauty in the age we live in. The world is open because of the internet. We're doing a podcast now through 2 different countries, and I want to make the most out of it. I want to see a lot more of the world. We traveled a lot. I want to travel a bit more, go back to South America, and just make that happen and connect with people there in fields that we are in. Learn from them, share what we do, wherever it might bring you there. I don't think there has to be the exact plan for that, but have a goal of what do you want, what do you want your family to be like, and you ask, is there a visual? I think you asked me, do I visualize it? That's something I had an issue with for a long time. I just could not visualize things. I just had ideas, but they were just in the head, and they didn't feel right. And I think there was a lot of times where I could have just stopped it because it's not going to work. I don't see it. I have to see it in order to manifest it. But the longer you do it, again, you have to retrain your brain to work on that. And then once you have a few pictures, and it's interesting because I've been doing working with a few people lately, and there was one of the tasks was just to create your perfect day in pictures, or where do you want to wake up and just by doing that, you have those pictures together. I did it once for 20 minutes. I have all the pictures in my head now. I know exactly which picture is on that collage, and it's just once you do that, I suppose it's easier. So that's probably something I always encourage people. It's just to give it a go, give it a try. Other people don't see things; they just have a feeling for it. So again, it's a process, and even for me, I mean, I've been doing these things now for 9 years, probably effectively maybe 5 years, and it does take time. When you've never done it, it does take time to create those patterns, those thought patterns, those beliefs also. And then you hear it from someone here, and then you hear from someone else there, and then you hear from that person again. And then it makes sense. So allowing that. Don't expect the quick changes, the quick results. So that's having a goal is important. I do believe that. It doesn't mean knowing everything in detail, but knowing kind of, just have an idea where you want to go, who you want to be with, what do you want your day to look like. Do you want to work 12 hours a day, or do you want to just have 4 hours a day and do other things the rest of the day? So kind of like set that for yourself. And just maybe like a side note, but it's not to do with visualization, but I used to be very fit when it comes to sports. Used to play a lot of soccer, used to exercise a lot, but I've become a bit lazy, I have to say, the last year. So just got back into that. But obviously my mind was like, I train like I used to train, but the body was nowhere capable of doing that. So the mind was like, oh, there's no point doing it then. So I had to retrain my mind to say, we'll just start with 10 minutes a day. Where one part of my brain was like, 10 minutes? Like, really? That's nothing. And you start with 10 minutes, and then you do 15 minutes. And I started with 20 push-ups a day. And for a long time, all I could do was 20 push-ups. Until one day, I was like I've been doing them now for like a month. I'm still only getting to 25. I'm sure I can do 30. And no problem to do 30 all of a sudden. Did them for a few weeks. Like, I've been doing 30 now for a while. I probably can get to 40. And all of a sudden I could do 40. And all I said was, I do 40 push-ups. And that's probably the same with the visualization. As in the beginning, it might be a bit difficult at first to see that, or to believe that that's possible. But the more often you do it, your mind's picking up like, oh, like, he's actually serious about that. That's what he wants. Let's make it happen. So therefore, it's important for us and for me to have those goals. But it took a while for me to understand it and to start doing it on a regular basis, really.
It's great to hear in terms, and I appreciate you being honest about that, because it is, it's something there where, it's actually it is an ongoing process. You have to work on it, and and I'm laughing because you say you get out, and listen, that's human nature. We get out of it. Life gets busy, stuff happens. You go from being a major gym bunny and hopefully mega healthy to slipping off the wagon as the pandemic has done for a lot of people. But then the simplicity of not saying it's not just going to be a tablet, a session, whatever. It's a cumulative, being kind to yourself, accepting yourself, and then saying, right, well, let's not do a marathon first thing. Let's start off 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, and building it up back up again.
Yeah, and one book that really helped me with that is, you probably read it, The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy.
Beautiful book, yeah.
It's just the little things, and once you read, it's like, okay, start with one little thing, do one little thing differently, and do that for a week, 2, 3, and then realize, okay, that's a habit now, or it's, I don't have to think about it anymore, and then do something else and add that to it. And that's what helped me, because when you try to work on one thing so hard, so for me it was like getting back into exercise, but I set too high standards, and then I did it for a week or two, and then I left it again because it was too hard to maintain that. So I did other things, and for example, we started for the first time writing down our expenses. Like, we just never done that before. It was just resistance. So doing that every day, if you do it every day, that's a 10-second job, but you do it every day whenever you have something. And then your brain's like, oh, okay, he's been doing this now consistently, even though it's just a small task. Now we can add something else and do that every day or every week or whenever it might be. So it's those little steps and not being too hard. It's probably like one of the things. And a lot of people will tell me that I'm too hard on myself, things have to be too perfect, or otherwise I wouldn't do them. So I think it's really important to understand that, and to realize again also where it comes from, and just to be kind, be kind to yourself, and start with little things, like little steps, whatever it might be, and do them. And when you realize, oh, I can do them, because people we beat ourselves up over things we don't do, but we don't give ourselves credit for the things we do. So really look at, what have I done this week that was actually good? What worked? And what didn't work? Well, okay, the thing that didn't work, well, I know I said I would do it, but did it make a big difference to this week? No, it didn't. So let's start again next week. Still, next week I didn't do it either. What is it that important? Or should I just forget about it completely and do something else that works for me? So I think that's just kind of audit yourself a little bit, rather than just being with the hammer like behind you and be like, oh, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. We all do something. We all did something every day. There might be people out there, parents out there who beat themselves up for the things they didn't do, but I bet they got up every week to bring their children to kindergarten or to make breakfast for them before they were awake. So that's good enough. That's something to be proud of. So start from there. Start with little things.
It's interesting too, because I quite like a very simple book is the Power of Now by Mel Robbins, or not the Power Now, sorry, the 5-second Rule by Mel Robbins. Power Now is a good book too, but but the 5-second rule was simply that, as we do, we love it, and if you've got kids, you understand in terms of 5-second rule. So a piece of food hits the floor and it's like, yeah, 5-second rule, it's fine. Not that I'm suggesting you should eat food off the floor, but that sort of little method of bypassing the, right, I'm going to get up now, or the alarm's just gone off, and you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, do it before then, because then you're like, actually, I'm a bit warm, it's nice and cozy in here, it's warm, or it's maybe don't really, it's wet outside or rain, whatever. So it's sort of a very sort of simple hack as such, to try and push people out too,
Yeah, totally. Mel Robbins would definitely be someone I would have listened to a good bit as well. The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 rule is great, and I know it worked for a lot of people. I haven't probably fully committed to it as such. Again, might give it another go since you mentioned here again. But yeah, it's great. Whatever works for you, I suppose. Whatever works for you. If you can, some people can just, the alarm goes off and they just get up and they just do. That's it. And other people might take a bit longer or a bit slower or do it in a different way. Whatever works for you works. But if something doesn't work, then be open to other ideas, especially when you have resistance to them. That's probably where you have to look at. If there's a lot of resistance to something, that's something you want to look at. Is there a lot of resistance to exactly like that 5-minute rule? Maybe I have to look at that again as well. Why am I not feeling super happy with that? So thanks for the reminder, Pete. Must look at that now myself. But yeah, that's something I always say to people: find something that works for you. And I mean, you mentioned books there. I think books are important to read, just different things. Just in order to grow, we have to do things we haven't done or learn something that we haven't learned before. Whether we agree with it or not, that's not so important. It's just to get different ideas. And it's also okay to read something and be like, oh, that's complete rubbish, I'm not interested in that, and put it away. Find something else. We all have different interests. So only encourage to find what drives you, because we all have something. We all have something that drives us. But just because of life and children maybe come in the way, and maybe a marriage, falls into pieces, and then you have a house to pay off or whatever, and you try to manage all of these things, and I can only imagine how difficult that is. But really deep inside, that's probably something that you always wanted to do. And I was actually mentioning this to my girlfriend this morning. My dad is a mechanic by trade, and when he was like qualified in the late mid 70s, he had the opportunity to go to Africa to work there, and he wanted to, but he never did. And to today he would say, I wished. Today he said, like, I wish I went back then, but like back in the 70s, coming from a small village, it was just, to Africa, what are you doing there? It's too, like, it's too dangerous or whatever it might be there. So, and I can see to this day, it's like, it's there, like, it's kind of like, why didn't I do it? So, and that's kind of a bit of a lesson for me also, just do more of the things that you are drawn to, because there's something there for you, whether it's just to go somewhere to travel, whether it's to go on a new business journey, whether it's to work with someone. Maybe you just have to go somewhere to meet someone there who connects to someone else there, for whatever it might be. And I think listening to those voices is really important for our own journey and growth, but also I think to set an example for our children, to like encourage children, and especially in the 21st century, to not put our fears or our doubts on them, and just to allow them to go their own way and to do their own thing. Yes, don't make stupid decisions, but if there's something that's pulling you, or where you're drawn to, go after it. Find it out. Go there and find out. If it doesn't work, come back. So you I think that's what life is really about, doing these different things and mixing with different cultures and meeting with different people and having just mingle with their ideas and connect that and see where it leads you, because it's all part of your journey, it's part of my journey, it's part of everyone's journey. It's just to allow it. No, again, if you're super happy where you are, that's okay too. Not everyone has to go out and travel the world and start a business. If you're happy with what you're doing and that's all you want, that's fine too. But just don't. I think that's one of the major things that I try to encourage you is don't do something that you really don't want to do, where you have to do it that you have to do every day. And that's probably like work related, or if it's if it's a relationship where you kind of know you shouldn't be there, and as difficult as it might be and whatever, like obviously just, so much involved in these things, but just have that courage and find the support. There's someone that can help you to make changes or to take that step or whatever it might be for you. So I think that's what I love encouraging people to do, and even to just to get that thought, just that idea into them, like to think, well, yeah, I could actually do that. Is very important.
I mean, it's great to have those, just giving yourself that space, right? To, as you said, I mean, previously, saying it's just being kind to yourself and saying, right, well, okay. Because I mean, another book, and I don't know, you probably relate to it, is like the chimp paradox, and Steve Peters. It's just an interesting concept, and then when you talk about sort of the ego, you talk, and predominantly it's talking about the ego in terms of, it describes it as a chimp, and a chimp in a box, or chimp in a cage, but that very action of disassociating yourself, so it's kind of going inside my brain. There's a chimp, so it's not just it's not me as such. It's like, why am I so angry? It's like, well, you disassociate and saying, why is my chimp so angry? My ego there. Now, ego is essential too. We can't sort of shoot the chimp and be done. We have to live with the chimp. But it's probably similar in terms of the language you're saying, in terms of almost disassociating ourselves, like you would, sit in the cinema and watch a film of yourself. You sit back and go, okay, just from a third party point of view, watch this. How do I feel? Why do I feel this? What's going on here, right? So it's having is it maturity, or is it awareness, or what? How would you describe it, that sort of level of thinking?
It's probably a mix of both, I would say. It's definitely, I know people in their very early 20s that are aware of that. I only got aware of that probably like the last 5, 6, 7 years. So I wasn't mature enough, but I also wasn't aware enough. It is important to understand that, and whether you call it a chimp, I know people are visual, and it's like, if you use that example, you can also just like, well, it's just a program, like I said earlier. So it doesn't really matter, whatever works for you, if you use the chimp or another animal that you want to use, another favorite animal you have. I think it's important, and also something I also learned a lot over the last years is reactions to situations, whether it's to like your family, like your parents, when you like you can easily get a bit angry, or a bit irritated by certain things. You're like, hold on now, like why? It's not the person. Yes, I react to that person, but it's never that person, that he made me angry or he disappointed me. And I'm now at a point where I say, like, well, he can't disappoint you. You can only be disappointed by something the person. But it's the same. Like, no, it's not the same. It's a complete different thing. You give your power away by saying that person disappointed me, so you're completely powerless. But when you take that step again back and look at it from the outside, like, okay, why do I react like that? Why do I not like that person? Or why do I straight away? And sometimes you just have a feeling, you don't connect with the person, or you might sense something the person is not right. That's okay. But to get that understanding, even when you have a close friend or something, and you pick up, because we pick up on people. We pick up on people's energies. We pick up on people's. You meet your friend, and you're like, something's not right with him, but he didn't say anything. You just know. So how do you know? Or maybe even before you even saw him, you're supposed to meet someone. You have a feeling of like, I don't know, is he all right? Is she all right? Where do we get that knowing from? And that's the connection that we all have with each other, and we pick up on these things even before we speak to them. And that's like something mothers have a lot with children. Like, mothers know straight away how their children are, because there's such a strong connection to them. And to go back to taking yourself out of that box and looking at it from the outside, yeah, it's always a reflection of yourself. And then you can like, why does what he says make me angry, but why does it not make Pete angry? So there's something in me, clearly, whether again, is that my own stuff that I'm carrying with me, or is it the chimp in my head that's telling me this person makes me angry? So I mean, like, complex, and we can look, like, you can look at it from like all sorts of angles. But I think again, once you pull yourself out of it and you look at it, and also you don't judge the way someone else reacts to it, because sometimes you have a group of people and you get into the same situation, and one of your friends like really reacts to something, and that person's like, well, how does that not annoy you? Why does it not annoy you? How can you not see that? It's just because there's a complete different perception, there's a different program. And how we also explain it from the energetic point of view, we say we have a field that surrounds us, right? And in our field, we do carry all of our, we carry all of our events. They're stored somewhere. You can't go to a doctor and say, like, can you x-ray my field and show me where is that trauma from 10 years ago? Where is that moment where I got abused? Where is that event where I was left alone? You can't see it, but it's there, it's in your field. And when you have a lot of that information in your field and you go and meet someone, and it could be the nicest experience, it could be the nicest person, but all of the information that's coming from the other person has to go through your field before it goes to you, right? Before you, like, it's within milliseconds before your brain picks up on it, it's already hit your heart field, and you pick up on that. So when you have a lot of stuff that you carry with you, it doesn't matter how nice something is, you still have a negative aspect to it. That's why you see a lot of people, they constantly find a negative in something, where you feel like, how can you find something negative in this? But it's because you carry so much with you. And we use the example of a car and the oil filter. When you change the old oil in the car, you're better off changing also the oil filter, because if you put in new oil and let it run through the old dirty oil filter, it just gets dirty quickly as well. And it's a bit like your field is like your oil filter. If everything has to go through the dirty filter, it doesn't matter how clean the oil is, the information looks different. And that's why it looks different for you and me and Mary and John. We all interpret the same situation completely differently, because we are all different. We had different experiences. Our parents had different experiences. Our grandparents had different experiences. So all of these things are part of it. And I think once we understand that, I think society could become a lot better and more understandable, because not about Mary is wrong and Pete is right. They're all right, just in their own reality, really. And I think that's just something that I love to talk about, because just give people that, because I was the person who's like, that's complete nonsense. What are you talking about? But now looking at it from like really far outside and getting to a point where I can literally pull myself out of a situation, like step back and don't say anything, and just kind of like look inside yourself, how you're acting, why you're acting, and understand it's nothing to do with the other person. It's me. That person just triggered something that's already been in me. And I think when we get to that point, to that awareness and that maturity, life in general could become a lot easier. Relationships would be a lot easier and more understanding. Conflicts, we still have conflicts, but when you get to the point when you have a conflict, like, okay, I react like this, but I do understand it has nothing to do with you. Let's talk about it. When you get to that point, it's like, it's just amazing, because it just gets so peaceful, because you don't judge the other person, you don't blame the other person. And even in my relationship, in our relationship, I would have done that in the beginning, where I would have picked on, on my partner, but only like understanding that now, like, look, now I would say, look, this really bothers me and it annoys me and it triggers something, because I know it's an old, but we know each other so well now. We know our triggers, and we're like, okay, that's my trigger, and you just said something there or did something there. It has nothing to do with you. And I think when you get to that point, it's amazing, because you live from a complete different space. You come from a different place. You don't come from the chimp. like you get more into your heart and into your knowing, rather than in the constant judging and analyzing and measuring, and yeah, the ego looking at things.
I love that. I love that sort of just again that sort of dissociation, and again someone's coming at you, someone's inflicting opinions or something else, and discharging yourself from that, and trying to just look back and say, because we are. I mean, as humans, we're very, I suppose it's all about the terminology. We're selfish, in as humans. But that, I mean, I know that has a negative connotation, but if you take back, I mean, we're basically, we need to do that for survival in terms of, and as you say, we have to interpret what somebody is saying, and we bring it into our minds, and we paint the picture in our heads. So you kind of always have to be preserving. And as you say, if someone's coming at you potentially with what you perceive as negative, then you have to sort of trying to sort of, take a very standoff view, I suppose, if you can, and sort of not react as such. But I just want to ask you, out of curiosity, would you consider yourself religious, spiritual, neither? Where do you sort of sit?
I would see myself spiritual.
Okay.
I do believe in a bigger, higher entity, and now whether you want to call it God or the universe or love or light or whatever you want to call it, it makes a difference to me, because I don't put it in a box. It's just something that we can't explain or analyze with our logic left brain. It's just something that you have to know and trust and believe in whichever way you want, or whichever way works for you. I think that's for me. From being German, we are mostly Catholic, especially here in the south. That's how I was raised and grew up, and had to go to church as a child. But I was never drawn. It was something you had to do. You have to go there. I was never like, I was never attracted to it, I suppose, in ways. And just the last years, I suppose, through the energy work and to listening to different people and watching documentaries and things like that, it's just that there is something out there that we can't put our mind to. There's just something out there that's so much bigger than we are. But understanding that there's laws that you can use, when it's law of attraction or other laws. But once you believe, and once you align yourself with that, the bigger that bigger feeling, the bigger belief, that faith in something bigger, that's when really powerful things happen. And for some people, it's going to church and praying and believing that the God brings that to them. Look, whatever works for you, but it's believing in that person, in that God. And I just believe in something differently, but it's, at the end of the day, it's the same message, I would say. So that's how I would see myself.
No, I mean, and thank you for sharing, because I know some people believe different things, and they different different systems, and that's, there's neither right nor wrong, in my opinion. It's we all have a right to an opinion. Just in terms of yourself, what's a guilty pleasure when you're not sort of trying to hack yourself and do that? I mean, what's Brian doing for pleasure?
For pleasure, my weak spot is cake. So I love cake. If I could, I would eat it all day, every day. But not so much like the super sweet cakes, just like a nice, like it could be just a carrot cake or a chocolate cake or a brownie, or a very German cake is like a poppy seed cake. I love that, and I'm here now, and I just have them as much as possible. So I do have those things here, and I'm not perfect 24/7. Absolutely not. But I also know, because I'm quite aware of how my body reacts to certain things, that I shouldn't have certain things. Not because on paper it's, that's not good for you. It's also because of knowing when you have too much of that, you just react to it in certain ways.
Mm.
I just have to avoid certain things. But now being in Germany, I do have things that I shouldn't have a lot, because I just enjoy it here, and I know when I'm going to Ireland in 2 weeks' time, that's going to be over again, and I get back into my routine. It's just very out of routine here at the moment, also because I'm seeing friends, and and then spending the weekend with my sister and the kids, and it's just completely different to how I would live at home.
Mm.
So it's just, there were times where I really judged myself on it and made myself feel really bad. But when you have a glass of wine, right, and before that already you're like, alcohol is so bad for you, and then you drink that glass of wine, well, it's not going to do you really well. But if you say like, I just enjoy that glass of wine, and we live in a wine region here, so you have one glass of wine a week, it's not going to be the end of the world for you. So I think that's important. There were times where it was very, very extreme, and completely avoided the things that I really enjoy. And it doesn't mean I'm eating a bag of crisps. It can be something home baked, a home baked cake or things like that. So, or some nice chocolate. I do enjoy these things very much. But I think when it's in a certain amount, and when you are also healthy, it's okay. Your body can handle it better than when you have maybe an underlying condition and you have it every day. If you're telling yourself it's okay to have that every day, but you're already having certain inflammation, maybe that's not the best idea. And maybe have it only once a week, or avoid it for a few weeks, and then let's introduce it later down the road. So I think that's just how I look at things. But for me, definitely, it's the cake.
It's interesting. I'm just wondering, I mean, is the body, if you were to listen to your body completely in terms of, what's good and what's bad for it and all the rest, and left to those own devices, you take away sort of, I mean, eating a pound of butter would not be, we know that's potentially not good, but does the body know that naturally, or does it, do we need a mix? So left to its own, my question I suppose is, left to its own devices, would the body be okay? Or are there so many stimulations and other stuff out there that actually we need to be consciously aware and subconsciously aware in terms of what we eat and what we do, and our little guilty pleasures?
I think deep down our body really knows. And if we really listened to it, we would make the exact right decisions. If we were to live in a forest now for a year and had nothing, we would struggle in the beginning, but we would then find the things that our body needs and what's good for us. I totally believe that, because that's like an inner knowing we have. But it's kind of been overwritten probably over the last definitely 50 years, from advertising, from food industry, from food processing, where pleasure, again, also the brain loves pleasure. The brain produces dopamine, like the feel-good hormone, when you have something nice. So that can become a bit more difficult then. But I think it's also, and it's interesting you mentioned that, because that's kind of like a little struggle that I have inside myself, and that I want to work on more in the future, is to get to that point where you maybe don't even want that cake anymore, because it's just that short few minutes of dopamine production, which I rate higher than what's really of benefit for me. And I haven't figured it out yet. I might never, but I find that an interesting concept to look at when you really, like, obviously want to be the best version of yourself. Are you the best version of yourself when you allow those treats because you're happy? Or are you the best version because you resisted that treat because there's other ingredients in there that might not be as good for you? So again, I think that's a concept to relook at it. There's like the psychology of eating is involved in there as well. So that's something I want to figure out. But I was at a point where I thought like, well, if I have all of these treats, I must not be good enough, or I must not be worthy to feel the best. Gotta like put that guilt on myself. And then I got to a point where like I'm just so rigorous, and I'm just so strict with certain things that I'm literally avoiding things that I actually enjoy having. So why not have them again? And it's actually okay having them. But really, if you look at it really deeply, it's probably not something that we should have, to be honest. It's an interesting concept because yeah, it's a lot of choices we make today when you go to the supermarket. They're driven by colors, by writing, by advertising, and especially with children. I mean, like that's how I grew up. It's still in there, and so that's kind of overwriting that inner knowing. And that's, you can obviously relate that to food, but also to life and health and everything in general overall. It's just kind of, I wouldn't say dumbed down, but in a way, information is blocked or overwritten, and you lose a bit of the connection with your true inner self. I mean, when you look at people who live like really off grid, and they raise their kids that way, and all the children know is going out to the garden and picking a carrot out of the ground, and they eat it with the dirt on. Even if you gave them a bag of crisps, they don't want it. So it's just like where you're coming from, and what you've seen, what you've been exposed to all the time. I think once you understand that, and that's why when TV plays a big role, the less TV you watch, the more prone you are also to making the decisions that are not always in favor for you. And I can see it in myself, like the way I grew up, and not blaming my mother, but my mother was American, and it was just all the certain things we had at home. German households didn't have them. Like we had toast with butter and cinnamon and sugar on it. Like that was like a breakfast. My mother says today when she looks back, she's like, how could I do that? But it was just the way she grew up, and it was like it's just nice for the children to have that. So just having that awareness for it, and I think really listening to self, is that short pleasure worth more than the long-term good feeling and health?
It's always interesting, I think, especially with kids. I know my kids love like orange Wotsits, like orange crisps, but I think orange seems to, whether it's the flavorings or coloring, seem to send kids pretty hyper. But as you say, I mean, it's the cleverness of the food industry, the marketing industry, etc. They're trying to work out exactly subconsciously what's going to trigger us, and then sort of making the product as close to that. So they're, the Facebook, the marketers, the food producers, the advertisers, the communicators, everything else are trying to work out, how do we trigger this person consciously and subconsciously? So, and like you say, then you have to almost go, well, how do I feel about this? And it's kind of going, well, I really like crisps. And it's like, well, do you? Or is that what you've been told? Because it's going to do this for you, and it's going to make you look clever. It's going to do this. And as you say, it's trying to strip all those layers back of going, what do I actually want here? And also possibly reframing it and saying, if someone's marketing this to me, then there's something in it for them. And as you say, if you've never had crisps and you've lived in the forest and all the rest, then you don't crave it. So what does that tell you? Super interesting, right?
It's very interesting, and I have to look at myself at times, because I was never the person craving ice cream or sweets here and there, but I was more the crisp person actually. And to this day, when I open a bag of crisps, I don't have just a few. It's like it's all or nothing. And knowing that is what makes it easy for me to not have them, because I know I can't just have a few and enjoy them. It's like literally and it's unconscious. Like you sit on, it's not like I put my hand in again and have another crisp and I put my hand in. It's like It just happens. Like we all know that. So where does that come from? And that again goes back, you can go back to childhood, these things. We probably have a memory of, feeling safe and feeling loved. We maybe got that from granny when we were sad. And this is still in us. And once you know that also, it makes it maybe easier to resist, or to not having that need for it. But I know to this day, if I have them, that's why we don't buy them. But when we buy them, we know they're gone. That's the way it is. Even though I have that training and I know they're not good for me, that's why I don't buy them. But when they're there, there's this psychological aspect that I'm trying to figure out and work on more. And again, maybe come to the point where, because I came to a point where I was like, well, why do I eat it? I know they're not good for me. Why do I have them? So what feeling is there, like what unfulfilled feeling is there inside that urges me to have them? And security and safety does play a role with that. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what makes you safe and secure, okay. But does it also make you feel good an hour later? And I think when you can get like those dots together and connect that, it might be easier to say no and to resist or to not have it. I'm still work in progress. I'm still working on that. I'm a lot better than I used to be. Like even certain times I'm just having a few, like getting there. But even now when I have it, I know it's just an old habit. It's an old behavior. That's when I had them all. So to the day when I have them all. And I think knowing that, and not, you even hear people when they beat themselves up over it. It's your conscious mind can be so willing, but you're run by a subconscious program. And understanding that makes it hopefully a lot easier for people to take their look and like, okay, I wanted to, or I did not want to, but it happened. And it wasn't me consciously deciding that, but it happened. And just separate yourself from that. And I think that's when you can dive into healing and into change and into the new you. So yeah, I suppose that's my take on that.
What's something you're really proud of?
Something I'm really proud of is who I have become so far. I'm proud of having made the decision to go to Ireland. I'm proud of the fact that I followed my heart to go to Ireland, although there were maybe other voices that said, you don't know what's there. That's proud. I'm proud of the fact that I, went to university, although I'm not doing anything with this anymore, but I'm proud of having done that and achieved that. I'm proud of the fact that I used to captain my local soccer team at the age of 21. Just things like that. They're things that I'm proud of. Yeah, I think they're the main things.
That's great. No, it's always great to have, those moments and to, to be able to sort of talk about that, because, if I would sort of say, do you like yourself? Do you love yourself? Do you value yourself? Where's your take?
Working on it. I think I do tell myself that, but that's probably something that I'm struggling with, is to really love myself. And probably that's definitely something that I say I do, because I would not say I'm not loving myself, because again, your words create your reality. So I'm saying I love myself in order to create that. But I would say right now I'm still I'm not even close there. I do like myself, and I have to remind myself more often actually, like that I'm actually a sound person, and that I'm okay the way I am, and that I'm good enough, that I'm worthy of whatever is out there for me. So I would say yes, but there's room to grow into that, the real, true, without any judgment, I love myself. absolutely.
No, I appreciate your openness and honesty, really. So, tell us, for you, in one or two words, then what's your fire in the belly then?
What's my fire in the belly then?
In a few words.
My fire in the belly is having complete independence to have the time for my children when they're there, to raise them the way I want them and not the system. That's my real fire in the belly, and have that independence to one of the big things for me is I want to work with a sea turtle rescue, just voluntarily, and just having the backup just to go there and do that maybe with not maybe with the children, like having that experience. I just feel it's like that's my fire that drives me, is to get to that point where I can just make that decision to do that. That's my fire.
That's awesome. Brian, it's been great. I mean, and thank you for sharing so much. So tell us, how can people reach out to you? Who do you really sort of, believe that you can help the most? And give us your links.
Yeah, so at the moment I can be found on Facebook. So you're probably difficult to find Brian Meter, but if you go to facebook.com/who is Brian Meter, you will find me. That's a link to my website, to my personal Facebook. Instagram is Brian Meter altogether _8. That used to be my number playing soccer. Brought me good luck. And working on a website, working on other things, but they're just not up yet. So really it's Facebook, it's Instagram, or email brian.meter@live.de. And yeah, I love to connect with anyone, really. Like, it could be anyone who is maybe working in the field, maybe is working as a therapist, as a holistic therapist, someone who wants to know more about biohacking, wants to work on their own health in different levels. So yeah, they're the people I'd love to connect with. And also, I'd love to connect with parents also, parents who are maybe looking for a way out, looking for different opportunities, and are open to hearing what I do, what else I do, in order to create that freedom or a bit more time in their life. They're the people that I would love to connect to.
Cool. Brian, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing so much, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Pete, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed it, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you.